We learn to live and live to learn in what has turned out to be an unprecedented occasion, an unprecedented situation, an unprecedented pandemic, with history being written across the geography of Mother Earth. And a minor virus has led to a major catastrophe, making us rethink, rewind, reset, reboot before we rebuild. The only certainty is uncertainty. The only constant is change. Change is inevitable. In fact, it's an imperative ingredient in progress. But while all progress necessitates change, all change does not mean progress. And that is where the dilemma lies. As we assume, anticipate, and analyze the challenges and solutions for the education world in our candid COVID classroom, where we meet and greet the new normal. This program is brought to you by Education, which looks at education ahead, and it's powered by Adamus Univest. It's such a pleasure to have all of you with us. Let me first quickly run through our very, very special panel of guests. So very warm welcome to all of you. Our topic for today, in fact, we've been talking about various issues right since the start of the post-COVID environment. We call it the post-COVID environment, although it is the ongoing COVID environment, because this is the time when you're going to prepare for what we can have as the new normal going forward once things open up and once we hit, hopefully soon, the post-COVID environment. The burning issue right now for journalists like us is the opening up of schools. And we hope that we can open up our discussion today with all kinds of points of view from all people from various walks of the education fraternity.
The COVID-19 has definitely given us so many lessons, and it has taught us that how to proceed in school and colleges. Yes, particularly for opening the schools, I am not in favor now. But I would say keep these online courses which we are trying to conduct day to day. Even I have seen many kids, they are doing homework on online. Earlier, my experience was that parents were not giving time. But I think you all will be agree. Now the parents are giving much time for the kids. So yeah, there are plus and minus. See, if we talk about the teaching and learning process, sure, then definitely there are 2 points very important. That yes, what we are doing now, whether it is sufficient, I would say yes, because we have no option. So there is only online option that we are doing. And after this pandemic, when it's over, definitely there will be some good time, and then the physical classes and then classroom teaching will be started. But right, yes, it will take time.
For a parent's point of view and even for a society, what could be more important than the health and well-being of the children? But let us also factor in that the same parents are also very apprehensive and fearful that this prolonged closure of schools is making their children falling behind in learning. And the third thing is that once the unlockdown one phase is in, the parents have to go back to work, and therefore the care giving will suffer, and they will not be able to give the same amount of time which they were able to give during the lockdown phases. So this is a very, very ironically an ideal dilemma in which the parents, the schools, the society, the government, they have to find out as to what is the right balance. And considering the situation today, as the professor was saying, in most of the cases, it is not conducive to open the campuses. And in my opinion, I think the online teaching is going to go for quite some time. And therefore, my sense is that during the 2 months period as the pandemic came in, the teachers were able to use their creativity, their ingenuity, their love and compassion for the children, and they reached out to them with whatever resources they had, more as a crisis management response. But now we have come to the second phase. We have to readjust and we have to bring in those elements of online teaching which could not cater to some of the other needs of the children. And therefore, a virtual learning has to go to its own version 2.0. And then we have to see how effective and how closely effective it could be to in-person teaching. So I think as educators, we are very concerned with this, and we are trying to find out as to how to do the capacity building, how to bring in infrastructure with regard to digital platform, and how to ensure not only in my school, but a vast majority of children do not have access to technology. So what is the best way to reach out to them?
We cannot compare the situations or the geographical differences from here and the other part of India. We are all people on the hilltops. We don't have the facilities like internet, even power supply. We lack a lot from the other part of India. Yet we are trying to cope up with the situation, and therefore we may not be able to make a good conclusion with both of our sides, because we are on the side of India. Coming back to my own school, how we planned, it was a kind of vision that we had 3 years ago, and we completed digitizing the school where I am. We already had from 2 years ago online classes, and our children had online exams. So we could go on even during this lockdown. We could continue our classes without stopping. So that is a success story from the other side. Now coming to the other area, I mean, how to manage today when the school reopens. The most important thing what I found is that government side, they should provide the platform. For example, internet facilities. That is the most important. Government is not thinking about that part and telling us we can reopen or we can close down. That we have to insist on the government side, that they should provide internet to all the students, all area, all India. Though Modi government is speaking about digital India, everything is completed. For Northeast India, for example, our state where we are zero. We don't have anything of this. These are only in letters or in words. So that is the situation we are living in.
The 3 months that has passed, children have actually lost contact with the schools. And we do not know what will happen in the coming year. The post-COVID era, I do not know what exactly. We are really uncertain and confused and worried.
Principal N.K. Mishra ji from Pune, what's your experience been? Are you in favor of opening up of schools, and why not?
So children have been spending their vacation and beyond social distancing, and since they were staying at home for last so many weeks, lifestyle has changed to more to being comfortable with parents, family members, and I can say that they have become more slack and lazy. Now resuming school online is a new road that we have never traveled, and we are in fact opening new road in digital teaching and learning environment. Now keeping in view of the same, what we have at Ekam residential school, we are more worried about the residential section. When the students return, how will they react to it? Will the parents send them back? Will they hold their students or children for the entire year? So many things can happen. Are we having the setup to include all the activities in a residential school that we have? That social distancing has to be maintained. That is there. That means we need to have more workers for us, more people for us. Those who can, if you are dividing in group, one being taken to the ground, the other being taken to elsewhere. That will add to the cost of the running system. So we need to sensitize the management, the parents, the students, how to accept all these things.
What I would like to say is, presently, as we all know that everybody of us are facing such a challenge which we have never faced before. So the thing is that regarding I would first like to support the previous two my most respected learned principals, what they said, who are from Nagaland, and I'm also from Imphal. So the problem which they have said, that obviously that's we are also facing that same thing. The internet problem, then the current that is lights, load shedding status, and all these things are very common in these states like Manipur, Nagaland, and presently I'm in Manipur. So I am also facing these problems, obviously. What I feel, before opening the school, proper guidelines have to be made so that, the situations we can easily cope up. Training has to be provided to the staff, to the teachers, to the administration staff, to the sub-staff, each and every staff of the school.
We have Dr. Vikas Verma as well. He's a parent of two school-going girls. The young one, I believe, is 8. The elder one is 10. Let's hear it from a parent, also get their perspective. Dr. Vikas, what's your perspective? Are you against the opening up of schools, and why?
So if we are thinking to open up the school at this stage, it will not be a right decision, because the condition has to be under control first, and though the chances of the disease is not so much prevalent in the children, but they can also get infected and can spread the disease.
Dr. Naveen Das, you've heard a variety of opinions from a variety of educationists, from a variety of states, and you've also heard a variety of problems. Do you believe that you're prepared to open up schools? And why not?
Well, I'm of the opinion that I don't think we are in a position to open the school the way we want to, or open all the schools the way they used to be pre-COVID. How do we, in a populous country like ours, how do we ensure social distancing? That's number one. Number two, even if I accept that school would do 100% of what is possible, can they ensure that there won't be any infection, or there won't be any laxity whatsoever, and infection probability is 0? Well, on the second point, I'm sure no school is going to give it in writing, or no school is in a position to say that, well, we are 100% sure that no infection can happen. Now, if it were a normal disease, maybe a little bit of an infection, and you are bedridden for a couple of days and then you are fit, I think things would have completely taken a different turn. But today, with such a pandemic and with such dire, dangerous consequences, I don't think any school is going to take the risk, leave aside even parents. So it's a question of both the parents as well as the school being 100% sure about the health and security and safety of the students, which is very, very difficult.
This country, its current dispensation, and countries across the world has almost come in unison to decide within themselves and for the public to say that, look, we have to learn to live with coronavirus. We have to learn to live with this pandemic. And when you take a decision like that, then every single part of your policy making has to somewhere down the line revolve around on that. I think that is also one compulsion which the government feel, apart from the other things of examinations and how you're going to pass students, and assessment theories and all. So perhaps that push is coming from there. It may be a little premature, but it's not unfounded and it's not irrational. Professor Joy.
I think before I get into the discussion of opening of schools, I would like to talk about what this last 3 months has taught us. I think the last 3 months has taught us a couple of things. One, is we need to look at multiple ways of education, or the way knowledge needs to be transferred to the kids. That's one. Second, at this point, we realize that I think as Chetan said it right, we have to learn to live along with another virus, all right, called COVID-19. I think we have seen that across. When we talk about opening of schools, Israel started to open the schools. South Korea opened schools, but second day they closed it down. And in Israel, we have seen that the moment they opened the schools, the number of infections increased to a great extent. So when I talk about opening schools, there are a couple of things which needs to be discussed, which needs to be worked upon. So it has to be partly online and partly classroom. When I talk about skill set building, we are talking about cognitive skills, we are talking about interpersonal skills, and we are talking about psychomotor skills. Opening of schools at this point in time would not be right, but we should look at opening schools in a staggered fashion. Probably 3 days in a week, or 2 hours a day, or probably 3 hours a day. That's what I would look at.
Ma'am, over the last 45 minutes, you've heard about 13 voices from various parts of the country, right? They come from a variety of backgrounds, all very distinct backgrounds, a variety of experiences, all very distinguished yet distinct experiences. They come from, having worked with very different sets of people, different age groups of people, different classes of people, different kinds of students and parents. Yet, they have one unified response, and that is now. The government has come out with this policy that schools need to be open. We understand where they're coming from. I want to draw from your experience of working so closely with the government and continuing to do so at different levels. What is it that makes them decide these things? Why should it not be participated enough when we have just randomly picked very distinguished guests from all over the country, and they have the same problem? So why should the government announce something without being inclusive in their approach? What is the thought process behind that? Would you be able to sensitize us?
In the directorates of education, in the states, in the school education secretaries' offices, everything is viewed as government schools and non-government schools. Very, very, I would say, little time is spent on non-government schools. It is just taken for granted that they are only there to use a very, I would say, simple expression. I'm not trying to be critical, but you look on them as people who have to be regulated, people who have to be kept in check, fees and standards, and they shouldn't be doing anything which is outside the policies and things. But you don't look at it from the point of view of the teachers, the principals, the schools, the students, the parents of non-government schools. Now, government itself is broken into 2 or 3 parts. You have the regular government schools, you have the aided schools, and then you have what was just mentioned, the budget schools, the chartered schools, all those. When we did the education policy, it was not accepted, but I think we consulted more than 200 experts. And Mr. Subramaniam, I remember we interacted very closely, and there was no time limit. People would come and talk about everything. What really struck us at that time when we did that education policy was that there are parts to education which have their own cohorts of people who are interested in furthering a certain cause. So if you look at the curriculum, you'll find that the curriculum is being made with a view that certain things should appear in that. This is something which in the COVID times really questioned whether you could be giving the kind of education, the content, which is more of making your mind a attuned to maybe the greatness of India, the culture of India, the geography of India, fine. But actually, what does a child need? One is the cohort of the primary education, then the middle education, then the secondary education, which obviously by then children and parents have started thinking of employability. And they are not going to be very convinced if you say that you're going to just do anything. Everybody would want to know what next when he passes the class 12 exam. And now all this PCB and PCM and that kind of competition, I think will have to be rethought through. Now I'm coming to you are only talking about opening of schools. One point that I tried to make out was, should the schools be having the same pedagogical curriculum and the ways of treating, or should you be completely reinventing that? Looking at the future of this country and where the needs would lie. If we are going to have more requirement of IT, we're going to have, not because of COVID, but because the generations that come would be exposed and would be having artificial intelligence, the fiber optics would have gone. So you can think beyond the book and curriculum kind of a module. Second thing that strikes me is that the RTE brought in a climate which was very well-intentioned, but it was really not being implemented the way it was being planned. The so-called, looking at how the progress of a child is there between the first month and the last month and giving marks for that, was not being done. Most teachers were doing it, frankly. We went around the country and found that because the paperwork was too much. Now, is this not an opportunity to get over those kinds of issues? Coming back, I can't give you a long lecture on education, but I want to just share with you what my thinking is as a grandmother. I have a little bit of exposure to children, not just my grandson, but children in Canada. I have exposure to some children in Switzerland. The thinking is twofold. In Canada, people are getting fed up because parents have begun to go to work, whether it is online or offline or whatever, but it's not being done entirely from the house. So then there is this pressure. What do you do with the child? Where do you keep that child? India has the pressure of elderly parents. I know the nuclear family is far more abundant, but even now you do have one parent or two in the house. What are you going to do with them? That is a second issue. The third issue is, what will you teach them, which is of relevance to the coming times? And COVID has suddenly thrown that. Fourth is the tendency for online to become a panacea, to the extent that there are so many free courses, so many online courses, which are, you have Shah Rukh Khan every day going on about Baijus and whatnot. We don't know anything, and somebody must do the standard setting. You can leave it to schools to choose the program. You don't have to tailor make it and force them to use something. But you must be able to say, do they have the common denominator needed to be able to give the child the kind of outcomes that you want from his learning from books? Now come to the next issue. When I talked to the people I talked in Bihar and I talked in Odisha and one more state, the reaction was rather, it was so euphoric that I was very worried that probably is anyone going into the depth of the matter. One, that we have a lot of satellite space and all these classes for higher classes are already being run on Doordarshan. And this is not a Government of India initiative. It has been done by the government of Odisha, by the government of Bihar. And the Doordarshan is something everybody is able to access. Everybody has that in the house. But as far as assignments go, it is only if the parents are themselves savvy with the computer that they would be able to supervise the child. The child cannot on his own suddenly know. You and I have glitches with our computers, and we have to ring some troubleshooter and guide us. Should I do this? Should I do that? What program? Drop down list. Look for this. What does this mean? We are doing it. And I've been using computers from 1992. So how do you expect a parent who has only been looking at his phone for WhatsApp messages, for a few entertainment programs, for news? He is not familiar with the computer in the way that we understand it. And how will he be able to motivate a child if he can't teach the child? Now, looking at this, looking at RTE, looking at the fact that parents have to go back to work, after all, if they're opening up, it means that even government servants have begun now going to offices. Where do they put them? There's a huge opportunity there for all kinds of activities which are not school-based, but which are based outside the home, not a creche exactly, but where maybe groups of 10 or 15 with distancing, you pay for it and you get that done. So many people are paying for this education, not putting their children in government schools because they think the child will be able to get something more. Coming back, I think that we have to be very guarded about profiteering, about commercialization, which is going to happen. We have to be aware that if you told me that if my children were the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, I would be extremely worried to open and say, catch the bus and go to school. Because you just don't know whose child is going to be contracted. But for that matter, Switzerland, the parents are at home under the restrictions of the government, but the children's schools are open. Now, you may say that this is a foolhardy kind of a situation, but Switzerland is not exactly, it's a thinking country, very tiny. Of course, India cannot compare. Coming back to the structure in the government in the states, that is an overwhelming majority when it comes to population data. In the urban areas, it's not so much. It's almost 50-50, the government schools and the private schools. But in the states which are not that progressive, in the more progressive ones, private school education has taken over, just like private healthcare has taken over. So in a way, it's something where if I were a policymaker, I would say first and foremost, it is the duty of the state health minister and the state health secretary to have meetings with cohorts from different schooling backgrounds, which is your government schools, your aided schools, your private schools, your other kind of schools which are, you might say, private, but not completely, you might say, private in the sense of schools, with your missionary schools. They all have an ethos of their own, and they have a culture which is very, very old. It has brought into our social life. A lot of us, I mean, I'm totally a product of some of those schools. So I would say that first, there is a need for collaboration. There's no need, I would have said, to open schools till August or September. Because this is something where you are not going to gain anything by pushing them in the months of June, July. Even August, maybe not even half of August can go. By that time, you will know how the trend of this pandemic is going. Are the death cases going up? If the death cases are going up, it is very, very troublesome. If, however, it is a case of only cases going up, and as the government and many epidemiologists are saying, 80% of the cases will be home quarantined and they'll get over it. If that is so, and the trend shows that, then in that case, it's fine. This herd immunity will set in and you will be able to somehow get over it. Old people may succumb, old people with comorbidities may die. We have to be prepared for that. But schools per se can certainly open. I would say that completely, if you had a vision that this should not be even thought of before August. We'll take a roll call on this end of July and use the remaining part of June and July for consultations which should be really open consultations on video, of course, but different cohorts have to be put together. When I did the Education Review Committee for the 1973 Act, I did the work much later, I think in about 2012-13. We had cohorts which the SCERT, the School Council of Education, Training and Research, they brought the different cohorts to our committee. And we listened to principals, we listened to parents, we listened to teachers, we listened to a large group of different subsectors of the school population. Schools are different. If you listened to different cohorts, representative cohorts, and the SCRTs and the education departments know it backwards. They know it. You don't have to teach them this. This is their full-time job. If they are made to have these cohorts and start consultation, look, these are the scenarios, 1, 2, 3. What exactly will you do for changing the curriculum? For a year, I think one can even give a complete passover to that curriculum as given in the textbooks. Suppose you said instead, the outcomes we would like a child in the age group of, not the age group of 10 and 12, but the age group of the entire primary, the entire middle. If you said these are the outcomes, this is what we would like them to be familiar with and to know. And this we would like them to be able to enunciate, to speak maybe in a language, 10 sentences of this and 20 sentences of that, which the child can articulate. I think that would probably be a kind of an education where the child gets a skill which he doesn't have and is able to learn something from the school rather than the textbook learning, because at this stage, how do you really perceive who is doing well, who is doing badly? Are you going to put down children because they've not done well when you know very well that you don't have the environment in many homes which privileged people have? So it will be the privileged versus the underprivileged. I think consultation will go up a lot if you leave it open to different sections of it has to be supervised by the government, but not supervised at a minister level or a secretary level. Supervised, and you come up with a plan for different cohorts of schools and then think of opening them, it will be better.
Now, the question is that then all of us have agreed virtually on this platform, which brings in a variety of people, that school should not open. Right? The question then is, when should they open? I think that is the more meatier question, because on EduMate, it's not just the problems you look at, we try to find solutions. So I'd request each of you to dedicate about a minute to let us know when the school should open, not more than that.
Before September, we should not think of opening the schools. Number one. Number two, opening the schools are going to be an exercise in hybrid education. And when I talk of hybrid education, it is not only about online and in-person teaching, but it is also a hybrid of so many other things. Number one, the schools and parents have to come together in a different avatar altogether. The second hybrid is between cognitive and socio-emotional learning and skill building. And Shalja ma'am has alluded to it very eloquently. The third thing is we have to rely a lot on a student agency. We have to foster it in so many ways. The fourth hybrid is hybridization of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. I'll not go into detail, but we are already practicing it in online learning, and that is something we have to do it.
But in case we open, I give two options. One is allow the students, those who would like to have online classes, be at home. And allow the students, with the permission of the parents, come to the school. There should be an agreement. And we should facilitate this both ways. When the government is ready with all the facilities, like as I introduced in the beginning, government can introduce all India fully with the internet, all other facilities, this option can be feasible. Then, other side, like we are reflecting about the need of children coming to the school and learning more things in a better way, in the systematic way, that can happen only when everything is settled. Also, when the parents have made the agreement with the schools that we have no problems, we don't file any case, we understand the situations, then only we can start. So these are the two options I would like to put forward.
The children are lacking essential, and the coming years you'll find we created a kind of people with no values, no systems, no social values and etiquette. So I would suggest, though we shall not just rush for tomorrow morning to open the school, open as early as possible. Then let them not lose this scholastic year. Maybe by September or so, someone suggesting we should open. By the time, I hope this peak time of the COVID will be over and people will have learned how to survive with this and live with it.
So it's very difficult to predict a particular time. Now, I have what I feel, in my opinion, there may be 2 or 3 steps. For example, number one, the government may just give a notice to all the schools, the stakeholders, the owners of the schools, to sit with the parents. The schools, the owners, they can sit with the parents, with the teachers, and as per their areas, they should prepare the proper plans, seeing all the circumstances, keeping in mind each and everything. They should chalk out a proper plan, individual area plan. Second thing, then after that, the government may sit with the school owners and a committee may be formed where the government personals may be there, doctors may be there, the stakeholders may be there, the owners of the schools, the principals, even some of the parent bodies, and an open discussion has to be done. Then a trial can be done. If it is found that the plan is successful, then only a proper decision may be taken that the school may be opened finally at this date or that date.
In the meantime, what we can do, that we need to reassess the physical spaces, what can happen after opening the school for healthy functioning of school. We need to review and replan, establish protocols and curriculum to better cope with the post-lockdown changes. Then we need to discuss with all the stakeholders and to prepare them for the changes in light of the new learning. And sir, since I am with the boarding system also, boarding system should not be opened till things are normal.
So we can open the school in the August and September month, 2 or 3 days a week, and with the 50% the children can be on the alternate day we can call off.
The moment the schools are ready with those steps, I think they should be able to open. So first one is in discussion with the parents, sit down and discuss with them, come to a complete solution of opening, time of opening. The second one is the school needs to get prepared for staggered opening. All right. So the entire class would not come in. There should be partly people coming in, students coming in, and they would come in, one group coming in on Monday and then Wednesday and Friday, and the rest coming in the other 3 days. Schools and the parents are ready with it. I think it should start off. Probably I would look at August. You have 2 months time to get yourself ready. August would be time when I would look at starting off school.
How do you stop students from hugging each other, from sharing tiffin, etc.? No, so there are risks. There are risks involved, and in this scenario, I think it cannot be one date for everyone. Look at the Northeast, where people are already missing out heavily on education. The fathers, they spoke so clearly that, look, 40-50% of my students do not have the wherewithal to even go through the cognitive part of my studies or my syllabus. They are missing out heavily. The moment you open school, they would rather rush to the school. But again, there is an India, there is a Bharat. I think we should be very, very cautious.
And as what Madam Shailaja was saying, that the government sits and makes things inclusive. That's the very purpose of us, for these webinars which we do. is to get as many voices from as many stratas of society related to education from the large expanse of this very diverse country, so that we can come on the same page, meet and greet and understand each other's problems. That's what EduMate stands for, is the meeting point for education, because we believe that to educate better, we have to edumate better.